Sorry to report major loss of designer and Andre Leon Talley died Tuesday, January 18th, 2022 in a hospital in New York City. He was born in Washington, D.C. in 1948 and was raised by his grandmother in Durham, North Carolina, where she worked as a cleaning lady. He found solace with the Jim Crow era South in the pages of Vogue magazine. But his unusual taste led to some animosity, with some Duke University students stoning him as he tried to cross campus to buy a copy of the magazine. I'm reading this from the Daily Mail, who did a big article, and I just want to say, for those who say, well, it's no big thing, he designed clothes, in the era that he came up, never blacks were totally cut out of the fashion world, and so many people who had design ideas and wanted to design clothes were basically doing it on the cheap from their homes, never made any money, lived with scraps and scraps of material around their homes, and pins and needles and scissors and all kinds of stuff. And to make it to Paris and something like Vogue was unheard of for a black person. So it was many years before I actually heard of him and actually saw him to just gasp and say, oh my God, I can't believe this man has done this. So I'm going to continue reading from the Daily Mail. Talley moved to New York in the 1970s following a stint in Rhode Island, where he attended the prestigious Brown University. He began a career in fashion at the age of 28 after snagging a job as a reporter at Women's Wear Daily. Now that would be very, very unusual in that era. He had been awarded a scholarship to the school after earning a bachelor's of arts degree in French literature at North Carolina Central University in 1970. He earned a master's degree in French studies in 1972 with initial plans to become a French teacher, which were later thwarted by his involvement in the New York City art scene, where he mingled with the likes of Andy Warhol and Karl Lagerfeld. Now, art was one place where blacks could find some mobility. Artists were more accepting of blacks as artists and so forth, and so there were blacks that were able to get into art museums and so forth in executive positions. But still, in the fashion world, this was pretty much unheard of. After reporting for Women's Wear Daily, Talley became the protege and former editor-in-chief of Vogue, Diana Vreeland, who helmed the publication from 1962 until 1971. At the time, Vreeland was working as director of the Costume Institute for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and Talley assisted her in the role, which saw her stage countless exhibitions. From there, Talley lent his natural writing talents to publications like Interview Magazine and the New York Times, among others, before stepping into his role at Vogue. He served as Vogue's fashion editor-director from 1983 to 1987 before becoming creative director in 1988. Talley stayed in the role until 1995 and after a 3-year absence, returned to Vogue in 1995 as editor at large. He held the position until his departure from the magazine in 2013. In 2003, Talley discussed his deep-rooted love for Vogue, which he had been fascinated with since his teen years, during a sit-down chat with Interview magazine. You know, a lot of people say nasty things about Anna Wintour because she split off from Andre in later years, and one of the things she kept complaining about was his weight. Well, you know, Anna, she's very thin, and Talley got to be huge. I don't know, that man must have been 400, 500 pounds. I don't know. It got to the point where he was eventually just wearing sheets as clothing, and very difficult for him to sit down. So it really was not a fit in the end, which is so ironic because he came in as a 6'6", beautiful, slim male, black, good looking, very sort of sophisticated. I don't know too much about what his personality was like back then, but he fit, and for many years he fit, and then he just started gaining so much weight that you could see he was not going to be able to stay in the fashion world as a leader among all of those cachectic models, you know, who are totally underweight and looking like they're starving, and then you have one of the leaders in the fashion industry being a black man who's, you know, like 500 pounds. Just wasn't going to work. So he didn't get his weight under control, and we knew that he was going to die. I mean, there was no way in the world that this was going to be a situation where he was going to be healthy and be able to live a long, healthy life. And I think he did actually, in this picture, have some weight off, believe it or not, because he was, I believe he was even bigger than this, but I don't know if that's just an illusion because of the material he's wearing. But he was just a very huge man, but a star in the fashion industry and a groundbreaker. All of these people who are in the music industry or other art industries or in the media who want to design clothes and go on, and they're minorities. Andre was one of the people, and for blacks he was the person who broke the wall to really get people into the Paris fashion industry. And so it's a very, very big loss losing this man. I always enjoyed seeing him as he popped up on various shows, maybe to host a show like America's Next Top Model, or here with Tamron Hall. And to just imagine what it was like for him to grow up in that era and be involved with Vogue magazine, and to see people look at him as he would go to a magazine rack, and instead of picking up one of the porno magazines, as most men did in those days, he went over to the Vogue magazine and bought that. And that was a very expensive magazine in those days, considering the dollars. And we'll miss him. It's very sad that he died, but of course he had many health problems because of his weight, and I don't know what else was going on with him. I don't know what else he was diagnosed with, but they did try to blame it on COVID, and I'm sure that could have been part of the reason that he died, but his health was bad for many, many years, and he would have been, I'm amazed he went so far in this COVID pandemic and, was surviving. He was involved in a problem with his house when he died. He was went into a deal with somebody to buy a house. He ended up as a renter, and after some time they claimed that he owed them between 500,000 or $900,000, and there was cross claims by Tally that he was buying the house. He was paying to become a part owner in the house. The house is beautiful, but it is a two-story house, and I can't imagine he ever was able to use that second story. So he was probably just living on the first floor and not getting full use of the house anyway. And it was a shame that he died involved in a major lawsuit about housing. A man who did so much in the fashion industry, who designed furniture, designed interiors, and to end up like that, I thought was very, very sad. And we certainly hope there was no foul play with this legal problem, and that he wasn't led to his death by problems that he suffered related to this legal dispute that he was involved with. But what can we say? He's a very, very great man for all people who are involved in fashion, and he will be sorely missed by all, and especially by those in the industry. And here he is with Karl Lagerfeld of Chanel.